Hi everyone, a very good afternoon to you all. On behalf of Digital Vidya, I am Divya Mahajan, welcoming you all to the webinar on necessary elements of digital marketing to grow your business. Today we have Srihari Palangala. He is the Marketing Director for EMC India and he'll be leading the session today. He is an engineer by profession and has a passion for technology and has spent around 15 years working as with technology products in various roles, including business development, consulting, and marketing across US, India, and Asia Pacific. So I'll just hand over the session to Srihari. And for the people who are joining in for the first time, you all can just type down your questions on the question panel at the right hand side. We'll take up all your questions after we are done with the presentation, and we'll be happy to help you with all your queries. Over to you, Srihari.
Great. Thank you, Divya, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining this session this afternoon. So what I will be covering here today over the next 30 to 35 odd minutes is sort of my experiences leveraging digital as a medium to reach customers, prospects, and various audiences, right? And in the course of doing so over the past 7 to 10 years or so, there are some learnings that I've gathered and ways in which I have thought about it, and a framework that I've looked at. So that's what I really wanted to share with you today, right? And like all of us know, by and large, in various degrees of leveraging digital to grow our business, there's an ongoing and a continuous learning process, right? So take this as a perspective from somebody who's learned and experienced it from some dimensions, but I'm sure there's a ton of other stuff that you can gather from other resources, including your experiences as well. So let's get started and start the discussion, right? So there are 4 things as I was thinking about this session. So there were 4 areas that I wanted to cover on the call today and the webinar today. The first was around largely a discussion around digital marketing tactics, right? So let's just level set around the opportunities and the options available as digital marketers for somebody either in the B2B or the B2C space. So I wanted to sort of precursor some of this. I'll try and keep it as generic as possible, and where necessary, segment it between the B2B and the B2C kind of approaches. Though a lot of my experience has been more on the B2B side, but I'll share some of this as well. Clearly, for digital to be successful, like most of us probably have a sense already, content is a key part of it, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about the considerations around content that you need to somewhere have at the back of your mind, either consciously or unconsciously thinking about it, right? And how that can sort of be a key pillar in terms of how your digital marketing efforts can yield fruit. As you go through the process, you're likely to hit challenges. I should have added in this agenda likely challenges and solutions as well, which is actually what I have in the content down below. Some thoughts around, listen, this is probably the roadblocks, so this is the kind of issues you're likely going to hit. And here are some thoughts around how you could circumvent them, right? Some of them are people approaches, some of it are process approaches, etc., that you can think and consider. And finally, for anything around digital to be successful, you clearly need to be able to have a dashboard, metrics and numbers and so on and so forth that you look at. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that, around some of the key elements of the dashboard that you should probably be considering and looking at. So that's sort of what we're going to spend the next 30 odd minutes covering. Okay, so let's dive into the first part of it. So before I get started, I wanted to level set over here, because as I was speaking to Divya about the kind of audience for this session and people who are going to log in to listen to this, there's a mix, right? There are some people who are probably experienced digital marketers. There are some people who are entrepreneurs who just like to leverage digital to get their business moving forward. There are probably some others who are early in the digital cycle, and so on, right? So let's spend a couple of minutes thinking about sort of what's so exciting about digital and why is it so important in your mix? Yeah. So take a look at the points on the left-hand side, and I've tried to highlight in yellow across pretty much the whole presentation key points that I hope that you can focus on and take away with you. Okay, so on the left-hand side, I'm yet to meet a marketing team which is saying that they are not constrained on time, budget, or people resources, right? So most teams are stretched. However, there is more expected out of every team and every person and every organization, right? Doing more with less is the new mantra. So clearly, you have to have programs that can scale and drive impact. The second thing is clearly around the ability to laser target. Yeah. So there was a phrase which marketers were often exposed to, right? Spray and pray. But I think those days are sufficiently behind us at this point. We've got the ability to be able to target the right message at the right time to the very right audience as well. A very big part as you look at your marketing mix and start seeing which programs are giving you the superlative returns, right? You will start seeing inbound and the ability to bring in the right kind of people through a self-selection process, and where they can self-serve some of the content themselves or some of the experiences themselves. They are likely to be the highest converting audiences for you. Yeah, and also this is a medium which is always on. Yeah, and it's working for you 24/7. And the other element of digital clearly is, having two-way conversations, right? It's not a monologue necessarily. It's the ability to hear what your audience is saying in a very open and a transparent manner. Yeah, and so you hear the good and the bad. And a little bit later, I'll talk to you about how you would be able to adapt yourself and leverage and even work in those scenarios, right, where you're having open conversations and you take the good and the bad along with you. Clearly, if you are in the product management side and building technology or products or services, what have you, the ability to listen to prospects is critical, right? And the ability to listen to customers is critical. And digital is a fabulous way to do that. Finally, I think we started alluding to this earlier, clear ability to closely track your spend. Yeah. And looking at the impact that marketing has and being able to measure as much as you can in terms of the activities and programs and the returns that it has given you or continues to give to you. The ability to do so will automatically mean that you can turn the dial up on programs and activities that are working well, while turning the dial down on programs that aren't doing so well, right? So clearly, the new world around marketing is the ability to be able to pilot, test the waters, and scale up as necessary, right? And digital is a fabulous way to do that. So this is in some sense to level set what digital you should be expecting from digital as you're looking to grow your business, right? And there are different aspects of this that we'll talk a little bit more in the session, which you can really leverage more as you're focused on your business, right? So, for instance, if you've got established products to some degree, and you've got good content, maybe inbound, driving better inbound is a focus for you, right? Versus a different business which has got a lot of a marketing mix, maybe for lack of a better word, all over the place. How are you going to be able to use digital to bring a little bit more semblance into that mix? Yeah, so that's sort of the way to read some of this. So in my mind, I think there are two buckets or two ways in which you can look at your tactics, right? Clearly, there are inbound self-selected audiences which come to your digital properties, right? And you have to spend time, energy, and effort to build that digital footprint. And on the left-hand side, it's probably not new to most people, but avenues that you can use and build to get yourself that digital footprint. Okay. What we'll also do is put a lens on these and see which ones are important in terms of must-haves and good-haves, good-to-haves and nice-to-haves in a little bit. The other aspect is around advertising, right? So you're able to take some of the digital vehicles and spend dollar amounts or spend marketing budget to be able to reach prospects, right? And sort of that's sort of the second bucket that I put down over there. And these are probably relatively more expensive, so you do have to spend some dollars, but that's the ability for you to take digital marketing and vehicles out into reaching prospects. Okay, so those are the two buckets the way we see it. So let me give you an example of how I've seen digital marketing work for me, right? And still, as we get into this discussion, hopefully this will warm it up a little bit for you to get a sense of why I'm personally pretty excited about digital. This is actually an example from a few years ago. It's not a recent one. If I recollect, it's probably about 6 or 7 years ago at least. But it left a very strong mark in my mind in terms of what digital can do. On the left-hand side, and sorry, at that point I used to be a product marketing manager for a virtualization product. On the left-hand side is what you will see as a very influential blogger who wrote about a product, okay, and clearly good reception and a fair commentary about it. But we had a competing product, and we reached out to him that evening itself, literally in a matter of a few hours, and spent some time sharing with him over email, and not even a conversation, just over email, the differentiation between our products and the additional value, etc. Right? And within 24 hours or thereabouts, there was another blog which was put up, which talked about our product. Okay, so what I want to highlight, which is there on the right-hand side, what I want to highlight to you is a few things, right? First, the ability for us to be able to get notification of the left-hand side activity happening is phenomenal, right? Even to this day, I'm excited about simple things like a Google alert, which gives you a sense of what's happening in the broad internet in specific areas and topics that you're interested in, right? And so that's very powerful. What you do with that alert is sort of the next stage, right? And you are able to filter it, take some actions, right? In this particular case, we actually were able to engage with that person. We probably would call him as an influencer, but regardless, we were able to engage with that person. And most people, broadly speaking, are pretty open to hearing the different points of view and take appropriate action if they see necessary and fit, right? So clearly, we had an outcome come from this, and all of this really happened within 24 to 48 hours, right? So think about this in a regular scenario, right, where we don't have digital helping us, right? Clearly, in terms of how this impacts your business, if you're looking at a footprint in specific regions across the globe, parts of the country, etc., the ability to scale and reach and hear these conversations is phenomenal, right? So I thought this was a pretty interesting and a powerful example, though it's dated, but it's still relevant in terms of what digital can do and the impact that it can have. So let's take the same digital marketing mix and, like I alluded to earlier a little bit, put a lens of, which ones, in my mind at least, are must-have elements, which ones are good to have, and which ones are probably nice to have, right? They are probably a gradation of priorities, if you want to look at it that way, across both B2B as well as B2C. Okay? I'm not going to read through all of this. You can pretty much see this. I do think the slides will be shared with you later as well, and so it's available as reference. It's on my LinkedIn profile as well. You can take a look at these slides over there. But I'll highlight a couple of things, right? So clearly, the ability to convert visitors as they come to your website is a must-to-have, whether you're a B2B or B2C, right? B2C is likely going to have gratification on the website as well. B2B, to some extent, may not. It may be a way to capture leads, etc., and that could be a visitor conversion, which is happening in the B2B scenario. There are some elements which are, so for instance, a social handle. In my mind, I think as a B2B, if you have one active, good social handle, it's probably sufficient. But if you're a B2C, you're likely going to have multiple of those. Likewise, a blog is pretty important for a B2B, but probably a nice to have for a B2C. Okay, I wouldn't put it very high on the priority list. And likewise for a whole bunch of those. Now, this is broad guidance. Okay, as you think through your products, your scenario, your portfolio of technology, services, etc., put a lens and see how you want to develop and build this. It's very unlikely you don't have anything at this point and you're starting from ground zero. You're likely to have some of this, but where you want to focus your energies and efforts may be a different lens and benefit that you see as you look at this table. Okay, so move on from over here and come to the next pillar of digital marketing around content. Right, so clearly the ability to leverage and develop and subsequently leverage content is key for your digital marketing success, right? And a lot of it rides in terms of what you're providing out there, which drives the inbound interest, as well as interest when you send in an unsolicited message, for instance, right? And you still expect some sort of a response from people. So let's talk a little bit about what in content is really interesting to people. Yeah. So at the customer, and sorry, the next couple of slides are very focused on the B2B side, more so than B2C. Yeah. So let's put a lens on that. So for the customer, you're likely going to hit an influencer, a beneficiary of using your technology, and probably a buyer persona. Okay, so there are three personas you're likely going to hit. The influencer is somebody who is, based on some sufficient conversation and engagement with him or her, will convert to becoming your advocate. Okay. The technology beneficiary, what I'm calling as a beneficiary, is really somebody who's going to use your product, right, or benefit from using your product. And finally, there's the buyer who probably is making the final choice and the final decision, right? So again, over here I highlighted a few key things which your content, which you're putting out there, and this is content which is either on digital or it could be offline, either ways, but let's talk digital for a minute over here, right? So the ability for content to be able to establish trust and credibility, especially if you're expecting them to be an advocate, is critical. Yeah, it's got to be able to show in a very quick, crisp manner the benefits of your technology or your product or your service, and clearly the ability to be able to compare and contrast with competition and answer some simple FAQs, right? I mean, what's good about this? How easy is it to use? How difficult, etc., right? But these are people who are, in some sense, already your friend, right, or want to be your friend, and they just need a few additional points to be able to win them over to your side. Okay. The other person you're likely going to want to be able to take content to is a beneficiary or somebody who's going to use your product. Okay. They're going to ask for a little more harder questions, right? But they're the ones who are going to see most delta in terms of your products and technologies. So they likely want to see benefit around their productivity when they use your product. They also want to know if it's easier than the current alternative. Easier is probably a word I'm using. It's probably different connotations that you can have, but think of it. They're likely going to be doing something today. What's the delta between that versus using your product or service? So that message and that content is important to be able to message to the beneficiary. They're also going to want to know what their peers are doing, right? And are their peers benefiting from this, right? So think of it from a bowling pin strategy, right? So if you've gone to a segment and you've got to be able to convert a couple of these, automatically the rest will fall, right? Because sometimes people think in herd mentality. So if they start seeing their peers and they don't want to be the first ones to do it, it's helpful to message and bring that point across. The other important one that I've seen, which is key, is driving the urgency, right? While all of the others may be true around benefits, it's easier to use, other people are using it, hey, but why is it important to use it now, right? And why should somebody drop what they're doing and the next important thing is to go and engage with your product or service, right? That's very, very key to be able to put forth. Otherwise, your product very quickly becomes a nice to have and not a must have, right? The other parts of content is really around for the buyer, right? I mean, there has to be a business benefit in some sense. It's likely going to be either a cost saving or revenue improvement for them when they use the product, technology, or service. And clearly, buyers may want to know what industry is talking about and saying about this, right? Or where the industry is moving. So that generally buyers like to be seen as being intelligent and making a choice ahead of the curve. So it's good to be able to put those other data points over there as well. So let's move on. I'll give you a couple of examples, right? So, I just picked up a couple on the web. So clearly, like we were talking about earlier, if you're talking about myths and, removing myths, then that's something that you're talking about to influencers and, borderline even users of technology, and you want to be able to establish credibility. You want to be able to respond to FAQs so that they are comfortable with your technology and product, etc. Now, the other one that you see on the right-hand side is, again, listen, are your peers benefiting from it, right? So if I were to see this advertisement, well, yes, there's somebody else benefiting from it, so likely to be useful. I'd like to think in the same lines, etc., and so on and so forth. So if you were to put the digital lens on a lot of this, right, and go back to those same tactics that we talked about earlier. So I spent a little bit of time trying to map this to different aspects of the marketing funnel, right? So let's talk a little bit about what we mean by the content objective on top, right? So marketing collateral in my mind is, in some sense, it's a static collateral. It's a piece of content that talks about your product or service, right? So it's fairly static in that sense. Awareness is exactly what the word means in terms of being able to let people know you exist, let people know your service exists, for instance. Demand gen is clearly the ability to be able to bring out from that digital universe those people who would potentially raise their hand and say that, listen, I'm interested in your product or service. Typically what this means is that there is an exchange of information, right? So they would fill out a web form, for instance, in exchange for some information. And that's how you capture their lead information. Nurture is the ability that they've already raised their hand, they're somewhere in your pipeline or somewhere in your scheme of things, but you have to continue to talk to them, right? And the last one is around thought leadership, where it's in some sense this is parallel to what you would do typically in PR, where the ability to position yourself as leaders in a particular space, right? And what you would do, the kind of conversations you would have, the kind of areas that you would showcase and highlight would be a reflection of it. So what I've done over here is taken those same digital marketing tactics that we started with and mapped them against different aspects of this funnel, right? Again, this is sort of my view of it. Feel free to take this, tweak it, adjust it to what might make sense in your context if you see in different perspectives, and sort of leverage it, right? Move forward from over here and come to the third dimension, which is around trials, right? I think an exciting piece of digital marketing is the ability to be able to get people from the broader internet to be able to engage with you and experience your product and service in a fairly frictionless manner, okay? And you are able to give them an experience of that product or service, okay? More likely product, service, not so sure, but at least you have a sense of the product and what I'm trying to say. So, the reason I'm talking about trials also is it's an early part of the funnel, And if we're able to run programs and activities which fills into this part of the funnel, you're automatically able to do more additional intelligent things which with those people within that pipeline, right? So I'll talk a little bit about what I mean. And you have a better chance of converting them into paying customers, for instance. And thereby, as you're looking to grow your business, that sort of feeds in pretty well. It automatically becomes a very healthy pipeline of prospects that you're continuously talking to. Okay. So if you were to look at some of this, why do we think trials are so important? So let's spend a couple of minutes on that. Trials, if somebody is taking the time, energy, and effort to evaluate your product, there is some degree of self-selection already happening. Okay. And, there's a fair degree of interest either in that space and technology or your specific product. And it is a very, very good indicator of qualified interest, right? Significantly better than any number of telephone conversations that you might have, and your calling team might be evaluating them based on either band or any other criteria. You also have in the trial base a very good set of prospects whom you can nurture better, right? And we'll talk about more intelligent things that you can do. If you recollect the earlier part about the right message to the right person at the right time, more intelligent things that you can do as you have got them into this funnel. Subsequently, you're able to have tailored and very specific, personalized communications going out to them, right? As you get a broader and a richer trial ecosystem growing, you clearly can demonstrate network effects, right? Where clearly the value of the community, and the importance of coming together as a community and using that product technology is significantly higher. So it is important, and it is an important avenue through which you can grow your business, right? The ability to build those trial base. However, there's a couple of things I wanted to just put out there as you're thinking. So clearly we're saying, listen, trials is important. We need to think about it because we get a good, rich, qualified base of, self-selected customers, kind of prospects coming to us, right? But then there are a few considerations, right? And again, putting it out there, think through in your context what might make sense. Who should be eligible, right? Is every visitor who comes to your site eligible for a free trial? Or do you want them to go through a certain process and a section of them get access to it? Right? Consideration that you want to think about. However, as you get them in and you do have a trial experience going, there are a couple of things I want to call out. The first is around the importance of a great customer experience. Okay, so make sure that it is superlative, because a lot of digital and the digital experience and trials is people are self-serving. Okay, and there's very little human and manual intervention happening within the process. So it's important for customers to have a great experience on that. The second thing which you probably need to think about is what I would say is, what is your free strategy, right? What is your free strategy? Because for you to build velocity and to grow business, consideration should be clearly around, listen, what are you going to offer free, if at all, and what are you going to charge for? Yeah, some people would obviously say it's a freemium model, etc. But then it's all sort of adjacent conversations to each other, right? The ability to have trials, the ability to give some parts of the product free, some parts of the product is paid, etc. Or the entire product is free for a certain period of time, then you charge for it. So there are various other avenues to think about as well. So let's look at it in a little more detail. And I talked about the first one already, about having a self-serve model where it is easy for people to get started, right? And if it could be a download, it could be a web experience, it could be a mobile experience, whatever it is, it needs to be easy for people to get started. And with a few clicks, they should be able to move on and get on with their job, right, in terms of what they're trying to do. From your perspective, it's important to be able to monitor the metrics, right? how many of your trial users are converting into paid members, right? How is the usage of your product tracking, right, during the trial? As you get into providing trial access to people, what is the kind of information you want to collect? You can have like a really huge form that people have to fill out before they get access to your trial. But then there's probably a optimum balance that you want to maintain, right? And improve your conversion chances, right? Subsequently, when you start looking at people using your trial product, right? What is a quick proof point that people using it are now hooked on to that product, right? How long do you need to provide the trial for? Is it 30-day period good, 60-day? What's the scope, right? And I think the other element of it is as you're looking at some of this, which features are more popular, how often and how frequent they're using it, etc., and so on. I think as a digital marketer, when you get people through a funnel of this sort, you have a couple of options, right? One is, you can target them with specific messages for the product or technology basis what they are interested in, right? And if you've got new developments coming in with rapid development cycles, you can take those messages out to them really quickly and get them to use it, get them to give you feedback, and some of that can happen, right? Marketing maintaining a very close pulse and connect with the customer. This is a great example of that, right? The other thing is the ability to clearly test different messages to different trial bases. Yeah? So for instance, if you want to collect more information up front, okay, however, that automatically reduces the burden or the chances of a dropout subsequently, because if they've given you all of that information, it's likely they're really, really serious, versus collecting just a couple of data points and then finding a large chunk of people dropping out. So, fairly straightforward example in terms of providing other avenues for people to sign up to and move in. Okay, so again, I'm going back to those tactics, and what I wanted to share with you for the next couple of minutes is, what are some of the challenges you're likely going to face? And like I said earlier, I'll propose and put forward some options and things that you could consider trying to circumvent those challenges. Yeah. Again, I'm not going to necessarily read out through every single one of them. You can take a look at it later as well, right? But clearly, from a simple digital experience, if conversion is an issue, you could try different calls to action, try different A/B tests, etc. There could be things around people, for instance, right? So if you see the white paper row that I have down there, you're looking at engaging content. One thing I do believe is, in digital marketing, it's important for you to have people who understand your product and service really well, okay? Because they're going to be engaging on social, through content, etc., and so on. So, my background is in technology, so I would say, hire techno marketers, right? People who have a reasonably strong technical background, and so that they have that level of that baseline level, both from a content as well as an engagement perspective. You want to look at the blog as an example. You could, and I've seen people also do is spread the load, right, with different teams and making it more like a culture within the company for people to contribute to that, and just doesn't become one team trying to create all that content, right? It's not just the content creation person's responsibility to own that all the time. Online videos, for instance, right? I mean, you could go to external vendors, or plan B could always be record your own, right? Even for product tools, demos, etc. There are really good tools available there, both free and paid, that you can use to capture simple demos and videos and so on, right? Or even more sophisticated videos. Okay. The final part I wanted to touch upon was around the dashboard and what it can potentially look at. So I've called out 4 areas over here. The first one is around traffic. Yeah, it's important for you to know, you know, are you reaching new audiences? Are you reaching the same set of people over and over again? Right. Look at it from different slices, and where possible, look at the kind of conversion on which kind of audiences are converting better. Yeah. And what kind of visitors or how many of the visitors actually gave you their information, right? So they're converting from a nameless visitor to somebody you can associate with and connect with. Which parts of the site are they spending more time on, and what's more exciting for them, right? Again, they are indirect pointers to areas that you might want to focus on as you look to grow your business. So I'll give you an example of this, for instance, right? Um, in the past, in one of the previous companies I worked at, education was a vertical which was showing a lot of interest in our product. Okay, and this comes across through metrics of this nature. It could be engagement metrics, it could be traffic metrics. In this case, it was both. Right, and over a period of time, and the period of time could be really short. It could be 3 weeks to maybe 6 to 8 weeks. You start observing patterns, right? And patterns is a very powerful thing that you can easily start getting your head around in digital marketing, right? And when you look at those patterns, you can then say that, listen, this seems to be a vertical where there is consistent interest, and based on the engagement, these seem to be the scenarios, and these seem to be the acceptability levels for our product and technology in that space, right? So what can we do to either price the product right, or either promote the product better in those verticals, right? And so that's how you would leverage some of these metrics in terms of insights to grow your business, really. And your engagement quality that you're able to capture and the patterns that you're able to see is critical, right? Which is why I was alluding to earlier also the kind of people that you have doing digital marketing for you. So in my mind, digital marketing is not so much about um, you know just some metrics around visitors and conversions, etc. But it is a lot more richer because that person has got that access and visibility into product conversations, product usage scenarios. They've got accessibility into the segments and so on and so forth, right? And so the ability to decipher a lot of those patterns and make sense and derive some insights from it is critical. Um, and then leads and trials, right? Trials we talked about a fair bit over here, right? What kind of trials are your programs and activities driving, right? Every communication or collateral or content that you put out over there can either lead to a trial or a lead, right? Unless, of course, it's more thought leadership or just plain nurturing, then that's fine, but it's likely to have a call to action. It's important that a lot of that from a digital perspective be integrated straight into your CRM. Yeah, because you've got the ability to then track it. You know which digital assets or which digital properties are really driving those leads for you. So for example, if you say, I wrote, let's say, a blog or a page on my website, which seems to be very, very interesting to people, and 40%, 50% of my traffic ends up going and reading that content. And from there, I have an X% which converts into a lead, right? Great insight for you, and the fact that you could track this lead back to the source of that content is very, very important. And finally, I'd say around the cost per action. The action could either be the lead capture, it could be a trial, sign up, what have you, but the ability to get a sense of that is key. When you get a good handle on your cost numbers, you're able to have more intelligent conversations with the agencies that you work with the campaigns that you're working on, and make those tweaks and changes to your campaigns where necessary. So I'm pretty much at the end. This was, I believe, my last slide. A couple of things which I wanted to call out. One is as you're getting into the digital marketing sort of realm and sort of leveraging it more and more, try and engage with influencers. Build up your persona. So sometimes the ability to give face to your brand is very different from just having your brand out there on social, right? And so you'll have some people extra engaging on behalf or as part of the brand out there. So give it time to be able to build that persona over a period of time. Yeah. And like I suppose most of us are aware, there's positive and negative. Okay. And make corrections where necessary. It's important. But realize that you will get hit with both. Yeah. And what I've generally found is that on the digital realm, people are generally approachable and ready to help. Okay. As long as you know what you're asking for and you are very specific in your outreach, right? And so engage when you are ready. And I found that people are helpful and receptive and open. So that's pretty much what I had. I'm at the end of sort of my presentation. I'm happy to pause here, take a look at the questions. If you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, my request is please send me some context, either of this webinar or if there's something specific you want to talk about. And I'm happy to connect and engage with you. My email address is also up over there, should you want to follow up with additional questions post this session. So I'll pause here, and maybe Vidya, if you want to highlight any questions that you want me to answer.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for such a wonderful session, Srihari. For the people who have some question, you can just type in the question panel on the right hand side, and we'll take up all your questions. So you can just start typing in. And also for people who want to join digital marketing course, you can just fill out the poll which is there on your screen. Our team will approach to you once after the webinar. So we haven't got any questions yet. It's some questions which were there in before the session. So one is question is about how can we analyze data and show insights after pulling from the data source like in Omniture.
Divya, I think there are a couple of questions, so maybe I can quickly go through those, and I'll come to the Omniture one as well, if that's okay. So I think the first one is if you have a blog and how to promote that blog to attract more audience. So though I see Kapil has left at this point, but that's fine. Still, listen, I think a lot of what you've got out there is content, right? You could find the right avenues to engage and post and reference back your blog. That is an option, but a lot of it does take time for you to build critical mass. Okay, and it's not sort of overnight that you would expect a ton of traffic. What I would do is first off find relevant topics which are important to blog about. That's point number one. Point number two is spend some diligence on creating content which is useful and relevant to the readers of that particular blog, right, after you've done that. And the third, if you've done the homework well on the first one, you will find great avenues and places to go post that as well, okay? And so that's how you should probably be thinking about it. Which digital marketing strategy is most effective for B2B? Listen, again, I put out there a framework. You've got to evaluate in your context. Different ones can work in different contexts. So for instance, videos may work well in some scenarios based on what you're trying to say. A blog is important if you want a longer term. So it really depends upon your context, okay? So Ashish Sharma wants to know the recorded. Divya, I'm sure you'll provide that to him. How can we analyze data and show insights after pulling data from Omniture? That's a great question, Inayat. So Omniture is like the Mercedes-Benz of analytics tools, right? It has tons and tons and tons of data. What I would do, so I'm assuming and I'm reading your question as, you've got traffic coming to a site and you want to be able to figure out different cuts of that traffic and being how they're converting. So there are ways in which you can filter that traffic sources, where they're coming from, and what kind of traffic is converting, and how it's going through that funnel, right? And the funnel would be a bunch of pages that they go through. So, for instance, example, let's say it's a purchase site, right? Let's say it's an e-commerce site, and it's a three-stage process for somebody to come to the product page, read through the product, click on the buy now, fill up some details, give the credit card, and then hit submit. So that's 4 steps, right? So tools like Omniture will tell you literally the drop rates across each of those, for instance, right? And a ton and ton of other stuff. There are other courses, etc., more that you can do to go get yourself familiarized with Omniture, but that's like a 30,000 foot view of what I was thinking. Blog marketing strategies. So there was a question, I joined late. I think they're asking for the recording. Vidya would probably provide that. Blog marketing strategies, I just talked about it a little while ago. To sort of repeat that first, find really interesting and important content that you think your audience would be interested in, or your space is interested in, not necessarily just your customers, prospects. It could be broader analysts, others as well. So that's important. That's step 1. Step 2 is really research, spend the time, energy, and effort to make a really compelling content. That content could also have additional things like rich things like video, etc. within it. And the third piece is, once you've done step 1 and 2, you really find ways to plug that in different conversations. Yeah. Is it important to learn Excel to do web data analysis? Well, yes, I think knowing Excel is always good, useful. So it is, but then again, if your question is about Omniture, Omniture has ways in which they can, within the web interface itself, you can do the filtering, etc. So the question here, Shraddha, is saying, that's fine, products, but my question is related to services. What would you suggest in terms of services? Again, I think a lot of points that I said around, if you go back to the content pieces around the influencer and the buyer, I think a few of those are still relevant in the service area as well, right? So, for instance, when you think about the influencer, look at your service differentiation, etc. All of those points that I talked about earlier, and highlight those, right? In terms of getting relevant traffic, one thing I didn't talk a lot about at the session is the ability to do co-marketing, and probably more relevant, I think, Shraddha, to your question about services. So, find ways in which you can plug your pitch or your content along with relevant co-marketers, right? It'll expand your footprint, and it'll also make your story more compelling. Right audience, apart from FB and LinkedIn ads, which other options are there? Well, listen, there's, again, if you go back to my digital marketing tactics, there's sort of two broad buckets. There are assets that you would develop and get people into it. For outbound, there's stuff right from display ads, emails, and stuff that you've talked about on social and LinkedIn. There's a lot more happening over and above this in terms of targeted display ads and hyper-targeted ads, which you should explore as well. Okay, so that will drive stickiness in terms of whom you're targeting, and it could even go down to the account-based level as well. Right, so those are avenues, Ritu, you want to explore over and above this. Person details, LinkedIn, demographic, person details or information, LinkedIn paid ad. Shraddha, I think that's probably something you want to check on LinkedIn, or if you want to connect with me separate on an email, I could try and help answer that. Can we check people read a blog without liking or commenting on it? So you need you do need analytics support, and that was the conversation around Omniture earlier. You could look at Google Analytics as well, and a few avenues like that. Most of the other sites as well have their inbuilt analytics, and that's what you want in terms of how many people are coming to your site and viewing, etc. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all the questions. Divya, I think there are no other questions here in the chat board.
Sure, we can then wind up the session. Thank you so much, Srihari. Would you like to share some of your experience regarding the webinar with everyone? How
It's
was it for you?
although it was really good. I hope the session has been useful. It's largely my experiences, like I said earlier. Take this as input from one practitioner who has spent some time, overlay it with your own experiences and learnings. And listen, this is an ongoing medium, okay, digital marketing. So every day you learn and just make your campaigns that much more effective and to great campaigns and success for all the people who've logged in. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. And everyone who is looking for presentation or recordings, we'll send out an email to you by Monday or Tuesday of the recording as well as presentation. So you all will get the session details through email. And thank you so much once again, Srihari. We would love to have you in another session in some other time. Thank you, guys.
Pleasure. Thank you
See you
very much,
next
everyone.
Friday.
Thank you. Bye.